From beautiful downtown Sacramento, it's time for Beach Blanket Fort Bingo.
Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Fort Bingo. Spazzy's got a show when you really want to know what's going on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Fort Bingo. Art and music, golden view, and your favorite comics too. Grab a spot and settle in, 'cause it's high time we begin. Beach Blanket Fort Bingo Podcast. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. I'm your host, Steve Schnee, and we've got a great show for you. But before I introduce our special guest, I'd like to introduce my co-host. Some know him as the lean and lanky bass player from the Muffs and as one of the internet's most popular podcast guests. But few realize that he's an amateur musician with quite a few tricks up his sleeve. Straight from the Magic Castle stage in Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen, Ronnie Barnett.
Thank you, Steve. Most of that's true. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, on this episode of Beach Blanket Fort Bingo, our special guest has had a tremendously long and inspiring career. Not only did he write and sing Magic, one of the greatest pop songs of all time, with his band Pilot, his career also includes a decade-long stint with the Alan Parsons Project during their heyday. He's performed with acts as diverse as Bay City Rollers, Kate Bush, Fish, Elton John, Sir Paul McCartney, and many others. And now he's just released the Magic Collection, an album that revisits and reworks some of his finest songs with Pilot and reminds us that he is truly one of the generation's greatest songwriters. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one, the only, David Paton. Welcome to the Blanket Fort, David.
Good to be here, and thanks for that introduction. Very flattering.
Before we talk about this release, let's go back to the beginning. Do you remember the moment you realized you wanted to be a musician? I mean, was it a singular moment or was it a series of events?
Yeah, it was a singular moment. It was quite a profound moment, actually. I was on vacation with my family in Spain, in the north of Spain. And it's San Sebastian, where they have a well-known bull run every August. And I somehow was out on the street on my own, and I got caught up in this bull run and found myself in a doorway, to escape these thundering beasts. And I dashed in the doorway, and all this noise and thundering feet and whatnot, and it all passed. And suddenly it was calm, and I could hear the sound of a guitar. I was only 11 years old at this point. I could hear the sound of a guitar, and I took a few steps to my left, and there, sitting on a windowsill, was a guy about my age, about 11 years old, and he was playing Spanish music on his guitar. And I was mesmerized. I just sat down on the pavement. I can still remember the feeling of sitting on that pavement in Spain with the jacaranda trees, the purple blossom, the sun on my back, this beautiful sound, and all that commotion had just disappeared, So I just sat there for 10 minutes or so until somebody called the young guy's name, and he disappeared. I went back to the hotel to my parents, and I said, I must have a Spanish guitar. I want a Spanish guitar. I kept saying it to them until they relented and bought me a Spanish guitar. It went in a cardboard box into the hold of the plane. And when we got back to Edinburgh, there it was, still in one piece. And I couldn't drag myself away from it after that. That was it. I didn't go out with my mates or anything. I just sat in my room with this guitar trying to master it.
I got to ask, but your parents let you on your own go
Yeah.
amongst those bulls? Like, wow.
But they didn't know the bulls were coming. We never knew.
Okay.
But although it's a national festival, we just never knew.
Yeah. Okay.
Not to jump too far ahead here, but that must be why the sound of the Spanish guitar has entered into a lot of your solo recordings.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. But especially because, well, you mentioned the Bay City Rollers. When I was in the Rollers, a member of Pilot also joined the Rollers, Billy Lyle, and he was a really good flautist, great piano player, and his reading was tops, real tops. And I wanted to be able to play Spanish guitar in the way that Segovia played Spanish guitar, you know, with asking a lot. However, I could hear these pieces of music that he was playing by J.S. Bach, and I thought, my ear's good, but it's not good enough to interpret that. I have to learn to read it. So Billy helped me a lot with the reading, and I continued playing the classical or Spanish guitar as much as possible. So it was just an obvious thing that when I started writing songs, in fact, I wrote a lot of my songs on the Spanish guitar. And there's a big Spanish influence in a lot of the songs.
Well, you're known primarily as a bass player, you know, but you're obviously a multi-instrumentalist. How did you originally gravitate towards the bass, or was that just how things evolved?
When I left the Bay City Rollers, I wanted to do something that was more like the bands that I was listening to. I mean, wasn't listening to pop music, which was what the Rollers were. They were a covers band at that point. I was listening to bands like Yes and Genesis and King Crimson, and Free had come along, and I was listening to Free and thought, I love that music. I'd love to write stuff like that, or be in a band like that. So a band advertised and said they wanted a bass player, and I thought, well, I play a bit of bass, but you know, guitar was my main thing. However, the guitarist also liked to play a bit of bass, so I joined that band and we swapped instruments. But I found myself drawn more and more and more to the bass guitar. I just loved being at the roots of everything, you know.
Just a smile, just a lonely smile, lets me know where I belong. Don't you know you're turning me on?
Your recording career started in the 60s with, you know, bands, I think like the Beachcombers and Boots and several other artists. Were you already writing songs by them? Were you the main songwriter?
No, I didn't start writing songs till I was about 19 or 20 years old. And some of them are pretty primitive. I still have some of the demos here, and, you know, lyrically, they're just make me cringe a little bit. But there was one or two songs, like one of the first songs I wrote that I thought, oh, I've written a proper song. It was called Just a Smile, and it was one of Pilot's singles, you know, and to me, I thought, that's a proper song. I'm really proud of that. And that was probably when I was 20 or 21 years old. We
mentioned the Bay City Rollers, but you were only in the Bay City Rollers for just a short time in like the early 70s. That was, I think, only when the Longmuir brothers were in the band. Derek and Alan, and was what was it, Nobby or Noddy or?
Yep, Nobby.
Yeah. So this was well before, you know, Les and Eric and Woody. And were you originally supposed to write songs for the band, or you were just strictly a guitarist?
Strictly a guitarist. They were quite accomplished, you know. They were quite, maybe Derek and Alan were the weakest links in the band as far as musical ability is concerned, but they weren't the same kind of band as you would associate the Bay City Rollers with. You know, there was no tartan or any stuff like that. As I said, we played covers band, but that was the only way to get gigs back then. You know, I mentioned the band I wanted to be in, playing music by Free, Bad Company, that kind of stuff. But we couldn't get the gigs doing music like that. However, we were having a ball. You know?
So you say it was pre-tartan, David. Did the Bay City Rollers have beards and stuff at that point?
No.
Sideburns? Yeah.
No, they wore smart suits and bow ties and stuff like that.
Okay.
Now you formed Pilot with Billy Lyle and Stuart Tosh, and you started doing demos. After signing with EMI, you started recording your debut album with producer Alan Parsons. Now, how did you connect with Alan?
when we signed with EMI, that was a big deal, because Abbey Road meant so much to me, just because of the Beatles. I was a fanatic on the Beatles. I used to buy the Beatles monthly. I bought all their albums, so I knew what the inside of Abbey Road looked like, and I knew it was owned by EMI Studios. So when we signed to EMI, that was my first question: can we do the album in Abbey Road? Yes, that's where you'll be doing it. And they said, there's a few engineers working in Abbey Road just now who want to graduate to the next step, which was producing. They gave me a list of 10 names, and I looked at all the names. Fourth one down, Alan Parsons, and I thought, I know that name from Pink Floyd. He did work on Dark Side of the Moon. He had also done a little bit of work, maybe tape hopping or whatnot, with the Beatles. So that was the obvious choice for me. And we met up with Alan. We actually got him to fly up to Edinburgh. He came to the studio that we worked in, and we sat him in this chair and said, produce this piece of music. We've just written it. It was probably only 4-track, but still, he did his best, and he did a great job. So yeah, we just thought he's the man, definitely.
Now, you did actually get to record in studio too, right?
That's right. Yeah, that was the first studio that we visited, and wow, what a buzz. Couldn't sleep the night before, of course. What a buzz. Yeah, even just going to the John,
right.
Yeah.
That's what I would think too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just saw a picture the other day. There's I don't know what they call the piano, but it's the piano that they played on like Lady Madonna and something. And it's still there in the studio. Yeah,
well, and we were there in 1974, and a lot of the stuff was there, including congas and the mellotron. Loads of stuff was still there. And I knew by looking at my Beatles books that these were all the instruments that they were using.
It's amazing.
Wow.
Ho, 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 it's magic, never believe it's not so. It's magic, never believe it's not so.
The single Magic, to me, it's one of the greatest pop songs of all time. I know that you've heard that a million times. I know you've had to sing it a million times, but it is truly, I think it trumps any solo Beatles recording of the 70s by far. And the song fills me with such complete, absolute joy every time. Every time. Now, when you wrote and recorded it, did you realize that song's potential, or was it just another David Paton song that you wrote?
It was just another song, and it came in 2 parts because I would sit at the piano sometimes to write a song. I'm no great piano player. I know you say multi-instrumentalist. No. I can play a bit of piano, I can write songs on it, but I wouldn't never consider myself a piano player. But I would sit at the piano and write, and even if it was 4 bars, I would have my cassette recorder on top of the piano, and I would put that into record and record these 4 bars. Now, I mentioned 4 bars because that's what magic is. It's just 4 bars repeated twice. That's the chorus. Oh ho ho, it's magic. Never believe it's not so. It's just that. That's all it. So, won't record that. And then I move on to something else, and I just thought that's a nice wee bit, but I had what I thought was lots of nice wee bits. And then I had to get up very early one morning, just as the sun was rising, and I was getting dressed, and I woke my wife by mistake. She opened her eyes, and the first thing she said was, "I've never been awake to see the daybreak." And immediately I heard the melody, in a way. I just heard it in my head, and I suddenly heard Magic, the little bit that I'd written. I thought, these 2 are going to go together fantastically well. So, yeah, I thought, great, I've got another song, but I didn't realize until we went to the studio in Edinburgh, the demo studio, where Billy worked as an engineer. I didn't realize until we recorded it and had drums on it, and all these ideas that I had in my head with it, la, 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 I could hear all of that. I could hear the hand claps. And even the guitar solo, I had kind of worked it out in my head. And it was only when all the bits came together, I just thought, this is a really good pop song. You know, I think I've got a good song here. But I never thought I'd be sitting here at 72 years old thinking it's still being played today.
Yeah. Now that, of course, was on this first album. The interesting thing about this, really, okay, it's been reissued in a box set, and I'll show that in a second. But this has the original version of Magic that I guess you presented it, and then either you or the studio said, go in and add a little bit to it or whatever. But still, this original version is still just gives me chills. To its core, the song is an incredible song. But that's available here. Now, you also had hits January, like you said, Just a Smile. The albums are filled with great songs, but when you went into the studio, were you going in to record an album of singles or an album with singles? Because there's a distinction. You know, some people record albums, some artists just record various tracks and throw them together.
Well, I mentioned that Billy worked in the studio in Edinburgh. He was the engineer in what we call Craig Hall Studios in Edinburgh. It's no longer here. But when I met him, he said to me, he told me he was the engineer, and he said, if you've written any songs, come down, I'll play piano for you if you play guitar for me. So over a period of about a year, that's what we did. At least once a week, we'd go into the studio and just record the songs we'd written that week. So by the time we got to working in Abbey Road, we had a year's worth of songs to choose from. So it wasn't a question of picking all the singles, it was just a question of saying, these are the best songs, let's put them on the first album. And although they were all kind of 3-minute pop songs, we still didn't have the thought that these are all hit singles. We just thought, this will make a good album.
No, I just want to say about that first album, you play guitar and bass on that album, correct?
Yeah, we never had a guitar player at that point.
Okay, yeah, and you alluded to being drawn to the bass before, but yeah, if you watch clips of yourself, you're playing bass live. I mean, did you find most bass players and the lead vocals, most people don't do that. So did you find that easy to do, or was it natural? Yeah.
I did at the time. Now, when I've done a couple of tours in Japan and whatnot, and there's some things, especially as I was so involved in the Alan Parsons Project, I think I sung lead on this song, whatever it was, and when I tried to play the bass part and sing at the same time, I thought, oh wait a minute, I can't do this. So I had to drop the song from the set because it's just the way the song came about. But although a lot of the pilot songs, we would sit in the studio, rehearse them and play them over and over and over. And, it comes to a point where, look how Sting managed to play all these lovely reggae parts on his bass. Yeah. It came to a point where I just forgot about, or never forgot about, but, muscle reaction, it just did what I wanted it to do. Although, you can get tongue-tied sometimes when you're concentrating too much on a nice bass part.
Did you ever think for a moment back then when you wrote Just a Smile or, Magic, that you thought 50 years from now, I'm going to be having to attempt to sing in this high key? Would you have, if you knew that, would you have written it, maybe sung? Because I think the version, by the way, the version of Just a Smile on the pilot or on the Magic collection, you don't sing it in the higher register, but it sounds fantastic the way it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it does. But do you kind of sometimes want to kick yourself?
No, what I do nowadays, what I do is I listen to the song and I say, why did I sing it in that key? That's a ridiculous key to sing in. Especially Magic is in G. I can sing it comfortably in E, but there's no way I can get anywhere near G nowadays. Yeah, but that's a natural thing. I don't know how McCartney does it. I think he still likes to sing these things in the same key as he wrote them in.
January, sick and tired, you've been hanging on me. You make me sad with your eyes. You're telling me lies. Don't go, don't go.
Second Flight, was this a collection of new songs, or did you use some of the songs you had written that you didn't use for the first album?
Yeah, some of them were songs that we didn't use for the first album. But for instance, January is on that album.
Mhm.
January written after, well, things happened at a different time in the States to the UK, because Magic was a hit here in October 74. I don't think it was a hit in the States until 75. So when I wrote Magic and it became a hit, and that was October, in the November, I wrote January. And EMI said we have to rush this out because we'll get this out for January. So for instance, that's one of the songs that was written after Magic.
First off, I want to apologize for rushing through this stuff because we've only got an hour, but I could have come up with 3 hours worth of questions.
Yeah.
So
you got a huge career.
yeah.
David. You know that, yeah.
Billy left and you recorded Morin Heights. And
Yeah.
this is actually produced by Roy Thomas Baker. Was Alan not available, or were you looking for a different producer with a different approach?
We wanted a bit of edge to some of the songs.
Mhm.
And Alan's great. I can't fault Alan, but after listening to Queen and buying the album Killer Queen, I just thought, oh, what a great sound out of the drums. It'd be nice to capture that. So we just approached Roy and asked him if he'd be interested in doing it. He said, yeah. And it was his idea. He says, come on, we'll go to Canada. Let's have some fun. And yeah, great. That's the attitude to have.
I'm down, but don't worry, no money, no time. Not a penny in my pocket. I got love, but who wants it?
Now, can you just briefly tell us the little story you have about Freddie Mercury?
Sure. Well, briefly, I'll try. When Pilot signed to EMI, there was also 2 other bands that signed to EMI, and EMI created a new label to accommodate these 3 bands: Pilot, Queen, and another band called Cockney Rebel, Steve Harley. So we were all on that same label. Now, I had no idea that Freddie was determined to get to #1 before the other 2 bands, but he was. We had socialized a couple of times. EMI wanted us to be friends, so we would go for meals together and eat on EMI's behalf, and just get to know each other. So we were doing Top of the Pops, and January had reached #1. And after Top of the Pops, we went to the bar, and Freddie Mercury, I could see him walking into the bar with his minder, and he was kind of not smiling, he was looking over at me, but I thought, oh, he looks like he wants to talk to me. So I walked over to him. Hi, Freddie, how you doing? And he said, I don't know why you're talking to me, because when I'm #1, I won't be talking to you. And with that, he stormed out of the room. And then it was after that I found out he's really upset because you got to #1.
Yeah.
That is so
Freddie's
awesome.
jealous of you, David. Yeah.
So,
And then you took his producer. Great.
so
Yeah, I didn't have that in me, to be envious of anybody getting to #1. I was just happy to be a musician, to be a songwriter, and I've written a #1. Great, yeah.
So after Morin Heights, you, Ian Berenson, and Ian had joined by the time of Second Flight. Let's clarify that. And you've maintained a great working relationship and friendship with Ian over the years. So he's worked on a lot of projects with you. After Morin Heights, the 3 of you were sort of swallowed into Alan Parsons Project. Did it feel, maybe after the pressure of having to front Pilot and write songs, was it kind of a nice change of pace to be welcomed into a band where you didn't have to write the songs?
Absolutely. Yeah, I wasn't really comfortable fronting a band, being the front man of Pilot. I kind of suffered from my nerves a little bit, having all that attention thrown at me, and I didn't handle it very well. I just wanted to be a musician, and all that media attention didn't sit well with me at all. So to start doing session work, I really felt like I'd found my niche by doing that kind of work. I could express myself as a musician. I could be creative and still enjoy it immensely without having any attention thrown at me. So in that way, just being the bass player in the band suited me much more than being the front man.
Yeah.
Did Alan Parsons, like, did he expect it to actually become a band, or did he think maybe that would be, you know, the Alan Parsons Project, one record? I always wondered that. Yeah.
No, Alec and Alan and Eric, they both they didn't want us to be known as the Alan Parsons Project. They are the Alan Parsons Project.
Yeah.
Right.
We, in their eyes, we were session players, you know, which is a bit insulting when you think of the input that we actually had in that band. We would sit in the studio for a whole day, maybe just doing one backing track. And Eric wrote all the songs. I know Alan's credited for writing the songs, but he didn't. It was Eric that wrote them all. And Eric was in the band with us. He was playing the keyboards, and it was Ian and I and Stuart Elliott, the drummer from Cockney Rebel. So we would sit there with Eric. Sometimes we'd turn these songs on their heads, so you wouldn't recognize what he had come into the studio with in the morning. You know, so for us, we weren't session players at all. We were part of the band, but we were never given that privilege to be known as the band. And Eric and Alan didn't want to tour. There wasn't a place for them on the stage. You know, so that was it. It was knocked on the head.
Well, you see that touches on another thing. Pilot only did 2 tours in the UK or Europe and never went anywhere else, right?
That's right. We had a lot of it was the apprenticeship years. We had a lot of management problems, and we were getting ripped off just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
You know, it is part of the apprenticeship. And but the good thing was we got ourselves known as good players, and producers were phoning us up, especially Ian and I, as you said. Producers were phoning us up and saying, "Oh, we'd like you to do this session, we'd like you to do this and that." And there was no time for Pilot. Apart from that, you know, our earnings were going to the management, not to. So we just thought the only way to combat this is to throw ourselves into session work. And as I also said, I was much more comfortable doing that anyway. So it just seemed the logical direction to take. And the songwriting just got thrown out the window, and the bass playing took over.
Get up and go and listen to the one-man show. Nobody else got a hope in the world, got a hope in the world. In time and rhyme.
Well, Pilot did release the one album. Was that more of a contractual obligation type thing? Because it's a great record. Even though it's only 2 of you, it's still a great record. It's you and Ian on that.
Yeah, that was Eric Wilson's idea, to put out another album of Pilot. And he, as I said, you know, they didn't want to tour, and I kept saying to them, "Can we not tour?" And they said no. So I think he managed to get us this deal, and to appease us, you know, to make us feel happier. And although I said the songwriting was hit on the head, if you can write a song, you don't stop. You know, you will still be walking around in the room. Somebody say something to you, and I think, "Oh, I can get a song out of that." You know, so I did still have a collection of songs. I just didn't have the ambition of recording them until that opportunity came along. So Two's the Crowd was Ian and I, with Eric Wilson's ideas of putting us back together again.
Well, as you said, you're doing all this session work. You did the first 2 Kate Bush albums. Did you realize just how special of an artist that she was going to become? Because she was completely unique.
Absolutely. Oh, we noticed it right away. We didn't get to hear any demos. We just walked into Abbey Road Studio 2 to record the first album. And Andrew Powell, who produced the first album, just said to Kate, just play them one of your songs. And she played the song, and it was inhibiting for her because, remember, she was only 18 years old. She didn't have a lot of experience, and she's surrounded by all these experienced session players. You know, it must have been quite intimidating for her. But she just played through the song, note perfect. Every note she sang was sweet, and our mouths were open when we listened to this performance. She was performing for us, you know.
Yeah.
A great thing.
Wow.
Yeah, we just knew, and every song from then on was just a joy, and she was a joy to work with as well. Really down to earth. You want a cup of tea, David?
Okay, you also played and or recorded with Camel, Rick Wakeman, Fish, the Marillion vocalist, not the U.S. Jam band. You even played
Good
with
to clarify that. Yeah.
Yeah. Here in America, more people know the PHISH.
Yeah.
Krista Berg, Chris Rea, Elton John. I think you played on the Death Wish 2 soundtrack.
Oh.
Yeah, Jimmy Page, Pretenders. I mean, I'm sure that I'm missing tons of them. One thing I couldn't figure out is at what point did you play with McCartney?
That was early on when he was in Studio 2 and I was in Studio 3 with Alan Parsons. And McCartney came to the studio. He knew we were Scottish, and he was doing a song called Mulla Kintyre, which he had written on his farm in Scotland, and he wanted Scottish voices on his song. So he just came into the control room and he said, "Guys, I've written a song. We're just doing a vocal overdub just now, and we'd like a few Scottish voices. Will you come along and sing on the song?" And he said, "Oh yeah." And for me, what thrill to stand beside him singing one of his songs. You know, it's one of these things you dream about. You think, if only I could do that. Yeah. And I did it. And after the session, Linda said to me, "Come along to the studio anytime you want. You can just come along and sit and watch. Paul won't mind." And I took her up on that. And I walked into the studio one time, and Paul was sitting there. He had just got a little joint together. Yeah. And I sat down beside him, and we talked and smoked. And you know, you mentioned a song that he's written, and say, I just loved Blackbird, and you know, I still wonder if I've got the right inversions. Picked up his guitar and he played Blackbird for me, so I could watch what he was doing.
Wow.
And you know, you have to pinch yourself at moments like that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, did you find yourself at this point, you know, you're working with all these great artists, you're doing great session work, you're respected, but did you find yourself missing creating your own music? Writing your own songs, singing your own songs?
Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah. I really enjoy the process of writing music and creating something from nothing. It's like being an artist. You know, you start with a blank canvas, and suddenly this song appears. And you know, especially as the technology progressed, it just got better and better, so that when I recorded at home, it stopped sounding like a demo and sounded more like a finished recording. So I threw myself into that as the technology had evolved, and started doing stuff myself. It's the most economical way to do it, if you can do it, you know. So if I can play a little bit of, as I say, a little bit of piano, guitar and bass, and I sing. So, you know, I've got all the ingredients.
Well, one thing before we hit your solo career here, I forgot to ask you about a band called Keats in 1984. I mean, this was, for guys like me and Ronnie, this was a friggin' super group. You get David Paton, you get Pete Bardens, you get Colin Blunstone, you know, Ian and Stewart. Now, and it was, of course, I think produced by Alan Parsons. Was this supposed to be a long-term thing or just a one and done project?
It was supposed to be long-term. And again, it was an idea that came from Eric, Eric was the business brains behind the Alan Parsons Project. So it was his idea. Yeah, you know, guys, I know you want to play live. I know you want to do something as a band. So why don't you do this? And he arranged all that. He helped us get it all together. And it just didn't, it wasn't organic enough. You know, it didn't have the legs to continue. And with us all being involved in other things, it just kind of fell apart. But and I think the initial sales were quite disappointing, so that demoralized us a little bit.
Right.
Do you think the album cover had something to do with that, David?
Yeah, the album cover
Maybe.
wasn't anything like the music.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I know. And we had no say in the artwork at all. So
Yeah.
we were a bit surprised when we saw that. You know, expecting a back on the front.
Yeah, I think when I first saw the Keats album, I was expecting it to sound like Hawkwind or something, you know.
Yeah,
Now-
very progressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you recorded a few solo albums in the early 90s under the name David Paton, which I've never been able to get a hold of. But about 20 years ago, you started recording music again and releasing it. I'm going to go through some of these things. Now, Pilot, actually, you and Ian got together as Pilot again and recorded Blue Yonder, which was basically a re-recording of Choose a Crowd. Now, did you record this because you weren't happy with the original? Or were you wanted to make this music available to the fans?
We wanted to make it available. It had been deleted and nobody could get a hold of it. And we had quite a few fans with the advent of Facebook and whatnot. We were getting more feedback from people. And that was one album that a lot of people, Pilot fans, didn't have, that they wanted it. So Ian and I decided, well, the best way to cure that. We also asked for the rights back and they said, no, you can't have them. So we thought, okay, let's just do it because we can. Let's
go through some of the solo stuff here. Viewers probably are already blown away by all the stuff that you've done so far. Your catalog, it's so rich in so many varied things. You know, you can get something that's nice, soft and acoustic, or something else that's going to have a lot of, maybe Spanish guitar. There are some songs that maybe veer closer to a Supertramp keyboard type sound, you know, other than like Pilot.
No ties, no strings attached. No one to hold me back. I can hold you near, love you here, hold you tight, love you right. Someone to...
By the way, at the end of this video, and maybe even now down here below, I'm going to put the address to David's website where you can get a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about right now. The Search is a fantastic record. Like No Ties, No Strings, We Are in Love, Too Many Ways. Was this a re-recording of an album that you had recorded in 1980?
That's correct. I signed to EMI as a solo artist in 1980. And unfortunately, the song that they thought was a single didn't chart. It didn't have any success. So the album that I had recorded was shelved. And I thought that was a great pity because for me, it had some good songs in it. And again, you know, the way to get it to the fans is just to re-record everything as best you can. I couldn't put, a lot of the songs had orchestra on it, which I couldn't reproduce, so I just left the orchestra on and you get the bare bones of the song.
It's a fantastic collection of songs, but still, it sounds contemporary and fresh. As I said before, always the great side of an artist is to be able to maintain that great songwriting ability, the singing, the playing, while continually moving forward.
Well, thank you so much.
Fellow man, what you wanna be? Oh, you've come a long way from the bottom of the sea. Yeah, you've come a long way. That's what frightens me.
Now, Fellow Man is another great album. This has songs that are more groove oriented, maybe influenced by funk and R&B and stuff, but like I Want and You and I, Across the Oceans, and the title track are fantastic. What can you tell us about that album? Was that a whole new batch of songs?
Yeah, it was a new batch of songs. And I traveled to Australia around about the time I was finishing the album, and I met up with a friend of mine from Edinburgh who was well into the Aboriginal culture, and he said to me, "Oh, there's a famous Aboriginal coming along to a church doing a ceremony. I'd like you to meet him. His name's Uncle Max." He took me along to the ceremony to meet Uncle Max, and he introduced me, and he said, "This is David Paton. He's come from Scotland." And Uncle Max said, "Oh, you've come a long way." And for some reason that stayed in my head, "You've come a long way." And when I went home and I wrote a song, the title track, "Fellow Man," and the first thing I say is, "You've come a long way." And that's the first line of the song. And it was because of Uncle Max that I kind of wrote the song. I started to see man, in a different light from the life we have, to meet an Aboriginal who had all the paint on and all this stuff. It made me think about our origins, where we've come from, and what we're doing to the planet now. So, that was the inspiration for the title of the album.
I wanna be with you. I wanna be there. I wanna be by your side and show how much I care. I wanna arrive with you anytime.
Under the Sun. This was in 2012. Another great. Now, I Want to Be With You has great guitar work. And Hold On Tight, Let It Go, another great collection of songs. Again, it proves that you haven't lost that knack. And the amazing thing that comes through in David Paton albums that I discovered was you can hear your joy in creating music, whether the song is a happy song or maybe an inward-looking song. You can still hear that you're loving the creative process and the recording process, and that's what makes these records fantastic.
It's because I love being a musician. I just think I've been so lucky to stumble upon this talent. If it hadn't been for that wee boy sitting playing the Spanish guitar, I might never have known that I had a musical gift. It was never recognized at school, for instance, in the music class. The teacher never knew that I had any kind of ability. So rewarding and so much fun as well.
Yeah.
That I want to say that joy comes through just you talking about your career here, David.
Oh,
yeah. Like, yeah, it really
I
does.
love talking to fellow musicians and just talking about music.
I am the eye in the sky, looking at you. I can read your mind. I am the maker of rules, dealing with fools. I can cheat you blind.
Pilot came together for a pilot project, APP, which took me about 3 weeks to figure out. And this is you and Ian recording Alan Parsons songs, and I'm assuming that these are all songs that you actually played on originally, and just offering your own spin. You also did the same thing on The Traveler, but you did that on your own. Now, what inspired those two releases?
Ian was very disappointed when Alan moved to the States, and they had been gigging here as the Alan Parsons Project. I couldn't do that. I was with Elton John for 3 or 4 years. However, Alan was touring in the UK with Ian on guitar, Stuart Elliott on drums, and Alan decided to move to the States and not use Ian Benson. So he was left kind of on the shelf. And it really hurt him that he couldn't, express himself and all these beautiful solos that he put together. He couldn't do that anymore. So I kind of thought it'd be a good idea if we did an album together, just to show that, we are the musicians of the Alan Parsons Project and we can reproduce it pretty well. I wanted people to hear our interpretations, although, that there's not a lot of improvisation on that particular first album, the pilot project. There's more improvisation on The Traveler. And getting away from the original concept. But Ian sadly has taken ill. He now has dementia,
Oh,
so he's unable to play all these wonderful guitar parts they played, and so that's the reason why The Traveller was done with just myself. Ian couldn't get involved. He wasn't able to play in that way.
both albums, by the way, are great love letters to the music you created,
Thank you.
and they're also a great representation, as I said, of the artistry of David Paton and, of course, Ian Berenson.
Yeah, and it's our tribute to Eric Wilson, who wrote all these songs. And
Mhm.
Eric is sadly no longer with us, so it was a kind of tribute to him, a nod to him as well.
Yes, this is a beautiful thing. And now it brings, yes, it feels so alive. Yes, this is a beautiful thing. And now it brings, yes, it feels so alive.
Anyway, 2020, guess what year that came out? 2020. Now, I'll tell you what inspired the ELO homage, Beautiful Thing. That is pure ELO.
Yeah, and it's not my song. I didn't write it. The guy wrote it for me. One of my friends wrote it for me to sing. And it wasn't going to go on the album at all. But, I kept listening to it and I thought, it's a good song. I know
It
it
is.
sounds like Yellow. I can hear that, obviously. But I thought, yeah, it's a good song. I'll put it on the album. And it's been well received. So I'm quite pleased that I used it.
This album is pretty much filled with collaborations.
Yeah, there's a couple of songs written by friends of mine who wrote songs for me to sing. And one of them's a Dutch friend who wrote one of the songs for me. And yeah, there's a lot of songs that I've written, but I've enjoyed singing songs, and I'm flattered that they've written songs for me to sing. So, in my eyes, it's a compliment to them that I've put the songs on the album, and lets them know that I was really pleased with their work.
Yeah, because Medicine is great. You Still Love Me. Don't Know What to Say is like Pilot 2020.
Yeah, yeah, and that's my French. You know that.
and More to Life is another great song.
Maybe we can dance in the crowd. Maybe we can sing together loud. What if we just run away together? That's what we can do.
Before we hit and briefly discuss the Magic Collection, what can you tell us about Beagle Hat?
Yeah, I lived in Spain for a while. While I was living in Spain, I had an email from a Japanese guy by the name of Hisatanika. And he said to me, I play in a band called Beagle Hat, and we've written a song. We really like Pilot. We've written a song. We think it would suit your voice. Would you sing it for us? And I thought, yeah, that's a compliment to me that a Japanese band would want me to sing on their album. Unfortunately, they didn't have any lyrics that I could sing. I mean, I don't sing Japanese. So he just gave me a rough idea what the song was about, and I put my own words to the song and sent it back to them. And they were delighted with it. They thought I had given it the treatment that they wanted. And they asked me to sing all the songs on the album. And yeah, I thought, this is a good idea. I think it's quite unique. I don't know how many other European or American artists have done such a thing with a Japanese band. So we did the two albums. They've now had to change their name because of contractual reasons, and they're now called Sheep. And the Japanese have a strange sense of humor. So they're called Sheep, and next month the Sheep album comes out. David Paton with Sheep. That'll be released in May. Yeah. So,
It means something totally different. In some context.
yeah, I've got a lot of followers.
Wait, David. The name Beagle Hat was taken? Like somebody?
It was, yeah. It was,
Wow.
yeah, it was taken by one of the band members who came up with the name, and then he left.
Okay.
The lost sheep.
You see, that guy will forever be known as the guy that broke up beagle hat.
Oh, the first album is called Magical Hat.
Yeah.
And it came about because Heath wanted a present. Yeah, he wanted a present from Scotland. So I sent him a thing. It's called a CU Jimmy hat. And what it is a tartan kind of tammy. And it has long ginger hair, false hair down the sides. So he put that on his son's head, who maybe 2 or 3 years old. And he sent me a picture of it. And I said, that's a great photograph. I said, you should call that hat a magical hat from now on. And he says, yeah, the title of the album.
I'm feeling blue without you. Come back soon. I miss you so much, and I feel out of touch, out of touch. And I know.
Let's talk about this fantastic new release. Now, this isn't just you re-recording pilot songs. You know, some of the songs stick to the original arrangements, maybe. I mean, I even compared song lengths. There are some songs that, like, the original is 307, the new version is 306. I mean, I'm anal about stuff like that. and some of them stick to the, you know, pretty close to the original arrangement. But then you've got High Into the Sky, To You Alone, Just a Smile, Lucky for Some. Those are completely different arrangements. And then the most exciting thing is there's a song called Out of Touch, which is an unreleased pilot song. Now, what can you tell us about that song?
We, as I said, you know, we recorded demos for about a year before we signed to EMI. A lot of these demos weren't used, and I still have them at home. Now, they were recorded pretty badly, and they were put onto an acetate, you know, a metal record, and scratch. And so, you know, I just had them. They were unplayable. So I had them lying about, and I was looking on my computer, and I found a few of the demos, and then I thought, I'll look at the acetates and see if there's anything on there that might be suitable for this album. And I found that song, and it sounds pretty terrible as a demo. It's just Billy Lyle and me playing bass. Billy's playing piano, I'm playing bass. There's no drums. And I could hear the possibilities with the song. It's not my song, it's Billy Lyle's song. But I could hear the potential in it. And I just thought, I'll give it a crack. And I'm delighted to see it turned out really well. And it's a bit of a feature. And for Pilot fans, it's a great find.
And it stands tall and proud with all these other great songs that now a song like Magic, it's pretty close to the original. Is that, I know that Squeeze about 10 years ago, they recorded an album called Spot the Difference, because all their songs were getting licensed out for advertisements, and they weren't making any money off of them. So they recorded an album that were kind of like as close to the original as possible, in hopes that maybe nobody would notice if there was like a jet ski commercial and they were playing some song in the background and it wasn't the original version, but it was still Squeeze. Is there any intention of using some of that way?
Yeah, I think I was maybe inspired by Ozempic. Is that what it's called in the States? Ozempic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're advertising Magic every 20 minutes in the States. You know,
Still do. Yeah.
And they didn't use the original recording. And I thought, that's ridiculous. You know, why didn't they, you know, they paid for the publishing. Why didn't they pay for the recording? And yeah, that kind of makes me think, well, I'll record it. And, you know, in case another Ozempic comes along and says, we'll use your version of the song.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell the difference. I did put a huge amount of work into trying to get it to sound the same. Even my vocal, I struggled for about a week to sing that song. You know, it's not something I'm going to be able to sing in that key on stage. I'll take it down a tone.
It makes me think, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but, you know, I kind of feel bad for, what was his name, Matthew Wilder, because he had a song called Break My Stride. and that song was used for like adult diaper commercial. So now it's forever associated with that.
Oh, gosh.
Before we wrap this up, and I'm sure that you've heard it a million times. I made you tell the Freddie Mercury story. I want to hear the Brian Wilson one.
You guys being from the LA area, you must know the Wonderments, do you?
Yeah,
I
we're
was with
friends with
Darian
them.
last night. Yeah. He's one of my best
Well,
friends. So yeah.
Probin Gregory got in touch with me, and he says, I'm in a band called the Wonderments, and we play 70s music. We've got Magic in our set, and I just wanted to tell you that we'll love the song. And I said, oh, great. And then he told me that he played in the Brian Wilson band, and he said, we're coming to Glasgow. Will you come along to the show? I said, yeah, I'd love to come along to the show. He said, I'll get you backstage and you can meet Brian. I thought, wow, well, there's a treat, a real genius, a real legend. So, yeah, I went to the concert. I loved the concert. It was one of the best concerts I'd heard. And after the show, Probin come round to get me, and he says, come on, I'll take you in to see Brian. So we walked into Brian's dressing room, and Probin said to him, Brian, this is David Paton. He's the guy that wrote Magic. And Brian looked at me and he said, you wrote Magic? He said, I love that song. I wish I'd written that song. Can you imagine what I'm thinking about? So,
Yeah.
Brian Wilson. And then I said to him, can I have my photograph taken with you? He said, sure, yeah, come and sit down. So I sat down beside him, and all he did was stare at me. He didn't take his eyes off me. And before the shutter went, he said, never believe it's not so. And I thought, that's a great thing to say while I'm sitting beside Brian Wilson, never believe it's not.
See, that's amazing. And isn't it great, this link now? Because the people that you were that got you to meet Brian Wilson, I'm friends with Darian. I know Probin or whatever, but Ronnie here is like best buds with those guys.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, several of them. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
lots of Brian stories, David, if we ever get together, or us and Darian and Probin, yeah.
I'd love to hear your story.
Brian's great. Yeah, Brian is amazing. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Take me higher than the tire. You'll never lose the way to go. See the sun come through the window, but you'll never get enough to know. No, you'll never get enough to know. You'll never get enough to know.
What's next for David Paton,
Well,
apart
as I
from
mentioned-
Sheep?
Yeah, Sheep. Yeah, Sheep is next. Sheep is next month, and I've just finished writing my memoirs because I had, like yourself, I've met a few people and even people that I didn't work, just people that I met, like Princess Diana and Schwarzenegger and people like that. I met all these people thanks to Elton John and George Harrison. I met all these people and I spoke to them, and I just thought people might be interested in what kind of conversation you would have with somebody of that stature. And,
Absolutely.
You realize being a musician and they're musicians, you kind of find a level where you can just talk and forget the celebrity if you can. Well, in George Harrison's case, I just froze.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of Elton stories. There's a few Chrissy Hine. There's lots of things that I have to talk about. And I never thought of myself as an author, but it was only when I started to write I realised I got more and more inspired as I was writing, and more things were coming into my head. So it was about 15 years ago that I started to write this book. I'm now coming to the end of it. I have the 70,000 words so far. So I'm coming to the end, and I've approached a couple of publishers, and I have a good deal of interest. So I think that might be the next thing that comes out, although it won't be until after Christmas. But in the meantime, I'm still writing. As I said, I've got 4 songs on the go now, and I hope there's another album. It's becoming more and more difficult to sell actual CDs. and the post office don't help by charging £5 every time you send a CD to the US or what. You know, it's difficult, but we still have downloads and whatnot, and there's still a great deal of pleasure out of writing music, and the people that want to listen to it, I'm delighted that people want to buy the CD or download the songs. Yeah, I'll just keep doing that. There's no reason to stop, no matter what age I am.
How can our viewers stay updated on all things David Paton and Pilot?
Well, I have the website, davidpaton.com, davidpatonsongs.com, and there's a new one called pilotmagic.com. All the songs are available from these sites. They're also available on Amazon and iTunes and all the rest.
Cherry Red box set, Steve, that you alluded to, the Cherry Red box set that has the 4 albums. Yeah, which mine is in the other room, but yes, there it is. Highly recommended. You
better copyright the URL davidpatonssheep.com.
Yeah, get ahead of that. I got one more question, David, before we sign off here. You played Live Aid with Elton John. So I know this is going to be a big chapter in your book, but Live Aid was short sets. There were probably more people backstage than in the audience. Like, how did that backstage work? Like, how many people were you that were sharing a dressing room? Like, how did that, and who were you sharing a dressing room with?
You remember Cat Stevens? Well, I was just standing at the front of my dressing room, and there sitting at a table was Cat Stevens, just under an umbrella on his own, nobody near him. And you'd see people arriving. Like I saw McCartney, I saw Bowie arriving, and they would just sit at tables and just mingle because all musicians with what an atmosphere backstage. There was a better atmosphere backstage than there was out front, and that was already electric.
Yeah,
wonderful. And when people say to me, "What was the biggest audience you played to?" I can happily say about 1.5 million.
Yeah. No, what a day. Like, yeah. I always think of logistics though. They must have brought in extra bathroom, toilets and stuff. Like
Anyway, that's it for us here at Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Ronnie and I would like to thank our guest, the legendary, the iconic David Paton, for taking the time to talk about his career. Remember to check out his website, check out all the great music from Pilot, and also check out the brand new collection called the Magic Collection. And thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time on Beach Blanket Fort Bingo. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.